Well, hey, Brendan, how are you? Thank you for joining me on Coffee with Fab. Although today we are actually drinking tea. So tell me, what have you got?
Afternoon, Fab. Good to see you. I've got peppermint tea this afternoon. I'm not actually a huge tea drinker, but I'm not a coffee drinker either. So it's about the best I do when it comes to hot liquid.
Well, it suits me perfectly today because we're after 2 o'clock, which is typically my cutoff for coffee. So mine is just a green tea. So there's a little bit of caffeine, but nowhere near as strong as coffee. But hey, Brendan, what I'd love to do is introduce you. But I think the best way to do that was if you could just tell me and people listening a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, sure. So I'm Sydney-based, Fab. I should start with that because in these unusual times, it's important to know these things. Different people going through different challenges. I've been in Sydney since I was about 12. Moved here, born in New Zealand. Proud Kiwi sports fan. Probably see the All Blacks stuff on the wall just over my shoulder. Had a couple of years in the US after we left New Zealand before we came to Sydney, and have been here ever since. Proud Australian, with the exception of the sports stuff. Career-wise, I have just about 20 years in the sort of accounting finance industry. I started as a graduate out of university with KPMG. Didn't know what external audit was, but got in there, gave it a go. Nearly 10 years later, sort of senior manager level, realised ultimately client facing wasn't for me, and went and found myself a divisional CFO role. At that point in time, my first taste of kind of true corporate finance, which was enlightening. Ultimately, though, wanted a bit more, and 4 years ago, I moved across to McGrathNicol, looking to take on the challenge of running the whole finance function, as opposed to just the divisional aspect of it that I had previously. So that's kind of the career path, and a little bit about me in terms of how I've ended up in Sydney. Personal front, I have two young girls. Young, they're age 5 and 8 now. They grow up quickly, and by gee, they keep you on your toes, and that's been an important part of keeping me young, even if there's a lot of grey hairs that go with it.
Well, I mean, this year would have been interesting too, based on that. You would have been working from home most of the time. So, and I'm based here in Melbourne, and likewise, I have two boys. My eldest is 8, my youngest is 1. And it's been a colourful time this year. Homeschooling definitely made me realise why I'm not a teacher, and luckily for him, I'm not a teacher. But Brendan, one of the things I think was really interesting about your profile and the fact that you're like a valued client of ours is this year in particular, when we look at maybe your plans for your customers at the start of the year, throughout, and then now what they're thinking for next year. Our business has been impacted, and I run the small business group, as we call it here in SAP, has really been impacted greatly. I'd love to understand from you what your customers were feeling at the start of the year, and their optimism, then how they were going through even the mid part of the year, and now as things are coming out. Any insight that you would have into that, and things and stories you could share would be really valuable.
Yeah, sure, sure, Fab. And look, I'll just briefly, I guess McGrathNicol as a firm. So as you alluded to, we work with a whole range of customers. Very much a firm in two parts. So we have, the firm that's the history of it that's probably best known for is restructuring and insolvency services, which pre and post insolvency, any company pretty much in distress is characterized by that group. And you'd think, through the recession, through COVID, that would have been a real kind of peak area for us. It's been interesting because all of the government stimulus and all of the bank support and the like that's out there has actually seen that work drop right off, which has been a fascinating impact for our firm, which traditionally has had a fairly consistent level of work run through that part of the firm. That hasn't changed, though, the number of inquiries and companies looking to understand, the impact of what an insolvency event might look like. So the level of inquiry has been through the roof, even if it hasn't, translated into actual voluntary administrations or liquidations or otherwise. Fair to say, pre-COVID, we were expecting, let's call it a 50-50 year in terms of our business advisory sort of arm and our insolvency work, with the business advisory side, very much focused on strategic advice, improvements, automations, implementations of systems, and the mid-market transaction space that we play in. So the sales and or purchases of businesses in that mid-market. We don't compete with the big guys, but we were expecting a fairly normal year. People were feeling reasonably confident at the start of the year. Transactions were planned, projects were planned. COVID hit, and we saw a whole range of projects just disappear overnight, which did lead to a reasonable amount of nervousness for our firm in particular, right at the start. But what we saw was that initial reaction from customers and how that flowed through to us then changed. I guess the nature of those client requests and questions was then started to focus on, okay, well, what can we do to get through this, make sure we're there to get through the other side, and then get back on track afterwards. So instead of our firm being geared up towards a normal level of the liquidation type work, all of a sudden, the business advisory, the business improvement services, the working capital management, refinancing assistance, all of that stuff that our advisory arm, our business advisory arm, focuses on a day-to-day point of view, very much came to the fore. And we also saw, even in our government advisory practice down in Canberra, but also in our forensics team, we also saw an increase in work there as customers and clients look to focus on, tightening up controls as staff and teams were working from home, getting our cyber advisory team in around, protections for all of the digitization and that virtual working space. And we've actually ended up having a very, very busy year and working with a whole range of clients, some of which we would have been working with anyway, but a range of other clients, helping them solve some of the, unique, well, I say unique now, it has been just about 9 months we've been operating in this funny year, but unique circumstances that everyone's found themselves in.
Yeah, it's interesting because when we looked at the start of the year, we did a little exercise in, it was around June, to look at based on all the trajectory that we had in the first 2.5 months, what do we think? And clearly this is subjective, where we would have been. And we had a whole lot of plans at the start of this year. We restructured part of the business, part of our go-to-market strategies, and all those sort of things have changed. And COVID hit us in such a way now that we're going to have to pull back on some of those plans, probably for another year or two. And even at this stage of the year, we are typically fully set on what next year is going to look like, but we've been somewhat anxious and reluctant to plan it too far back because we weren't really sure what was going to happen. So we're kind of pushing it as far as we possibly can to say, right, I think now is how it's going to be. And we were talking previously that I had a meeting with parts of my team earlier, and some of the comments I'm getting back are, I can't wait for this year to be over. And I think everybody's expecting to have their New Year celebration and wake up on the 1st of January and things will be different. And unfortunately, I just don't think they will be for a few months. As we start to come out and build more confidence and the market starts to build more confidence in the economy, then I think as we get to the second half of next year, we'll be really, really strong. But it's just this year has really challenged not just the business, but even down to a personal level of that resilience and how people are dealing with the fact that we're going to be working in a completely different way. It's been really interesting on that. And a lot of the discussions, Brendan, we're having with our prospects are generally around this digital transformation that's happening and that people are talking about. How have you and your business sort of embraced that?
So our business, Fab, I guess insolvency firm background, we're a fairly conservative firm by nature. Having seen some of the horror stories out there, it tends to be late to the party as opposed to leading the charge. But I joined the firm about 4 years ago, and I think in the time since, the level of digitization and change that McGrathNicol's gone through would probably make an interesting case study for just about anyone. Where I guess the biggest part that I've played in, and given we've digitized all of our client working files and everything, so all parts of the firm have been touched in some way. But in the finance management, financial management of the firm, pretty quickly after I came in, we realised, assessed and determined the ERP that we had wasn't really fit for purpose longer term, and everything that was attached to that therefore became problematic. Expense module, AP, processes, and the like. So the entire financial system was basically put up for review. 12 months ago, we went live with our new ERP. It was a SAP product, so a little plug out there for S4 public cloud. But as part of that, and before we even chose SAP as the ERP, we'd already determined that Concur was the path forward for expense management for the firm. I'd used it previously at KPMG. There are plenty of other reference customers out there that will tell you it is absolutely top notch, and that's right. What we didn't realize as part of the overall plans and moving ERP to the cloud, getting the expense management mobile and much more user friendly, was that we had the ability to go and plug in the invoice module for Concur, which your sales team did a great job with that one, because we weren't initially out there looking at it, but as we got further into the expense module assessment, said, okay, we'll take a look at that. And I was like, okay, we've got to look at this. We had a desire to get into a space that had some OCR functionality built in, and the ability to automate different steps in the process, but also to have just to have the mobile app approval has been godsend for a bunch of our approvers. So we set out to completely reset the entire system, the entire end-to-end process for our teams. And we've come through it now 12 months post go live. In most cases, with flying colours. There's still elements of the change management we could have done better, or could have gone more right than we did. But when I talk to the invoice module for Concur, there's not much more that we could have done. We've had some really good feedback out of that one. So for us, big program that's now thankfully done. A lot of hard work, and now it's looking to take every incremental gain we can get out of each of those modules, each of those systems that have comprised our transformation.
Were there any benefits that you saw from the deployment of the accounts payable process with us that you weren't previously focused on or aware of? Any little surprises in that?
So that say, were there benefits? Absolutely, there were. I think the one that maybe we weren't focused on initially that we've gotten a lot out of, and it's as simple as the invoice manager screen. That's when you open up that invoice module and you get that snapshot of, this is how many invoices are here, this is how many are awaiting approval, this is how many have been approved but are awaiting kind of final tick off by finance. From the system we had to have something like that, the ability to click through from a governance and oversight point of view was just a great little win for us that we weren't expecting. But being able to reset that whole process, we've almost halved the time that it takes for the touch points from an invoice arriving to when it gets paid. We'd timed that out. It was close to 12 minutes of touch points across the cycle. We're down to around about 6, which is pretty bloody good when you're talking about hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of invoices per month. To be knocking that out of the overall process, that was ultimately what led us to go with the invoice module, and it's paid off. like I said, the feedback from those involved in the process has been very positive as well.
Yeah, I think when and we hear it a lot, Brendan, when people, as we do many things, when they finally implement it, they say they wish they had have done it earlier. But it's not typically a core part of their business until it becomes a problem, which is one of the reasons why were there any surprises, when you actually did implement it itself. But look, thank you so much for that. Your insight into how you've been operating and how the business has been this year has been great. What do you think, as we close this out? What are your personal thoughts on what next year might look like?
I think you touched on it earlier when you alluded to the people in your team talking about 1 January and kind of magically thinking that things will change. Looking ahead, I think the first half of 2021 is still going to be pretty choppy in a number of cases. And the reason I say that, while Melbourne's coming back online as they exit lockdown, we still have a huge amount of stimulus and support that's out there. And at some point, that has to be switched off.
Yeah.
And even if it is phased down, each one of those step downs, there are going to be challenges. And until we see what it looks like off the back of that, I think it is going to be a little bit choppy. Once we get to the other side, though, as you alluded to, confidence starts to return, and I think second half of next year we're going to start to see a return to normal, whatever new normal actually is. But getting into some sort of consistency maybe is a better way of phrasing it.
Yeah, that's great. One of the things we're advising some of our customers at the moment is, and you mentioned it about the government grants and the support that they've got there, to take advantage of this time, to put in the processes, and if digital transformation is a part of their plan, to do that now, while they have the opportunity to, because we've found that some of the conversations we're having, it's almost like a relief, and they're taking that pause when now should be the time when they really shouldn't, and really build into what next year will look like. And hopefully we're not waiting till the second half of next year, but I agree with you 100% on that. So on that, Brendan, look, thanks so much for your time today. I really appreciate it, and your tea. I'm almost finished mine. This is good timing. Enjoy the rest of your day and week.
Thank you, Fab. Enjoyed it.